Hello and welcome back to Hydroponics Daily, the podcast where we examine the tools, techniques and nutrients that shape the future of soilless agriculture, or hydroponics. I'm your host, Dr. Russell Sharp, and today we're going to focus on one of the oldest and most potent natural fertilizers in the world, and that's guano. And I'm going to talk about this one because I talked about organic fertilizers previously, and I said excrement is not used very often in hydroponics because it's smelly, it's hard to preserve, and there are a number of health issues with, obviously using excrement in a hydroponic system with all that hot, bubbling liquid around. You could seriously get an issue. However, guano is probably the only excrement-based product, I promise I'm going to stop saying excrements here, that is used in hydroponics. You will find it in grow shops and maybe in hybrid systems where they use cocoa or still use a bit of soil in their hydroponic system, then you'll find that. So it's actually probably the oldest, intense fertilizer that's known. It's got a fascinating history, a checkered history. What is guano? It's an accumulation of excrement of seabirds and bats, and seal populations can build up some guano on isolated islands. However, when we're talking about guano, we're either talking seabird guano or bat guano, and it forms in a deposit over time in caves, on islands, and coastal areas where it undergoes natural decomposition and mineralization. So it's not just a fresh excrement, it is the decomposed mineralized product. So it was recognized historically for its exceptional nutrient density. So civilizations such as the Incas utilized seabird guano extensively. But it was in the 19th century when there was a boom in guano that was found on guano-rich islands in South America and Central America. And actually, it's thought that guano sort of kick-started American imperialism and the American Empire when they rushed to find guano islands in the Caribbean, and these islands are still disputed, the territorial claims, and there's one that is disputed between Haiti and the US. I wouldn't want to get into a war between Haiti and the US. I think one side might win, rather, hands down on that one. But then in 1908, the Haber-Bosch process was invented for fixing synthetic nitrogen, and 1913, the first Haber-Bosch factory was developed, and then since then synthetic fertilizers have taken over from guano as the main source of fertilizers, so there wasn't such a rush to get guano. You'll often hear nitrogen fertilizers being a wartime invention and developed from bomb making and things like that. That's nonsense. It's not a wartime invention. It was a peacetime invention, actually, that was just used in the war to make gunpowder. But before then, there was guano. And guano was used to make gunpowder as well because it's got a very high nitrate level. So, as I say, Victorian times or colonial times, South America is the place where most guano is harvested, but there is guano other places around the world, wherever you get seabirds or bats. Australia is a big one, Turkey. And sometimes it can be sustainably harvested and it can be a good source of organic fertilizer. And I think OMRI allow bat guano to be organic, but bird guano is not. So I think it's from albatrosses and what's the other one? One of those big birds from South America. And it depends on how it's harvested. And the harvesting has got a tricky, checkered past. And a lot of slave labor was used. A lot of people were exported to South America under false pretenses to harvest it and were basically slave laborers. And a lot of convicts were used to harvest it in terrible conditions, terrible working conditions, very unhealthy as well. And we'll go on to that. And so nowadays it's actually quite a highly paid job in Chile and Peru, but still dangerous. I mean, some of the unsustainable practices include like blowing the mines up to get the guano out, and obviously that disturbs the bats just a slight bit. So make sure you always get your guano from a sustainable source. And bird guano is got a good high level of nitrogen because birds don't excrete urea, they excrete uric acid, and that is much higher in concentration in nitrogen. Whereas bat guano, that's very high in phosphates, say your P, and both of them will be fairly high in potassium as well. So a good NPK fertilizer. It also contains, and here's the crucial bit, it also contains a lot of organic carbon and organic matter, whereas most NPK fertilizers don't. So you get a really good source that's going to feed the soil microbes and other things that are going to be good for the plants, provide amino acids and stuff like this. So really good source of organic nitrogen, all the beautiful things that does for your grow media. It also contains a lot of chitin. If bats are eating insects, insectivorous bats, then it's going to contain a lot of chitin. And chitin is great, again, for helping plants resist pests and disease. So that's good. And then a typical bat guano will have a pH of about 7.25. So not in the sweet spot of 5.5 to 6.5 for hydroponics, but close, not far off. Certainly a lot closer to the sweet spot than, say, fish fertilizer or alkaline extract, seaweed extracts, the cheap and cheerful seaweed extracts. So yeah, not too bad on that front. What else can we say? You have to be careful. Don't get the dust. Don't make a dust when you're using guano, because there is a fungal disease that lives in guano. It's called histoplasmarosis or something like this. I'm not a human biologist. So I'm not particularly good with human diseases. That's found in all birds. You'll get that on chicken manure and stuff like that. So you have to be careful. It's particularly a problem for people who are immunocompromised. So it's one of the first diseases that HIV patients get. And so you have to be really careful if you were immunocompromised using bat guano or chicken manure. You can't get rabies from bat guano, even though bats do carry rabies, or some bats do. But if you were harvesting guano, then obviously if you got bit by a bat, then you'd have to get treatment for rabies. I've been vaccinated against rabies when I went to French Guiana in the Amazon rainforest. So I would still need treatment if I was bitten by a bat, but I'm not going to harvest any bat guano anytime soon. And obviously, if you're harvesting bat guano in China, you might want to look out for COVID. There is a rumor that it comes from bats and was extracted from bats. Another rumor is that it came from a food market. Yeah, you make your mind up on that one. I'm not getting into that. I still want to go back to China every now and again. So what else can we say about guano? It's popular with organic hydroponic growers, even though, strictly speaking, it is probably best with soil systems. Unlike slow-release organic fertilizers like bone meal or blood-based ones, it's going to have fast nutrient uptake because it's fairly soluble. Not completely soluble. You can't just put it in water and it dissolves. It's organic, it's going to stimulate microbes. And a good one that we've talked about before on the organic one is, because it's based on excrement and not parts of animals, it's a great one for vegans and for vegetarians because it doesn't require meat production or fish, and animal carcasses or blood and things like this. So it's probably one of the few NPK products that's organic and vegan. So stick that in your pipe and smoke. Don't smoke it. No, don't stick that in your pipe and smoke it. Other uses for guano, other than just being incorporated into your grow media, is that it can be used as a compost tea or a guano tea, where it's seeped for 24 to 48 hours. The liquid's then strained and added to the nutrients reservoir that way, so you get a soluble form, or applied as a foliar spray. Obviously be careful, don't get the spray, inhale the spray and things like that. Be really super careful. As we said, it can be used in cocoa, coir, drip-fed media, any passive systems. It can be part of the nutrient regime. It can be diluted and monitored carefully to ensure there's no clogging or salt buildup. Yeah, you don't want to really be careful with the EC value, especially if it's near the sea, potentially for salt contamination, things like this. So several companies sell powdered guano and guano in pelletized, I can't say that word, I'm not even going to try again, liquid guanos. So they're all different ones, different pH balanced, perfect ones for organic consumption. I'll just find the one that is the most common one in Europe. Guano Carlong, that's the one. It's the blue bottles with the red lids. And they're a really good company, and I definitely recommend them for anything guano based. And they do really other good organic products like seaweed extracts and things like that. So yeah, check them out. So high nutrient density, rapid availability, compatible with organic standards, vegan and vegetarian, enhance the microbial life in non-sterile systems like cocoa, where there's not going to be indigenous sort of beneficial microbes. The drawbacks are the risks of pathogen contamination, that histoplasmarosis thing that we talked about. And also you're going to have things like, you're always going to be careful, any sort of organic grow media, always be careful of things like Legionnaires as well. So never inhale any dust. wear a mask if possible. There's potential for over-fertilization if you overdo it, and there might be inconsistencies between batches and customers. So we say, and there's also the ethical environmental concerns of disrupting a fragile ecosystem, such as bird nests and bat caves. And the guano, there's loads of animals that live on guano as well in their native habitats. It's like fish that eat guano and stuff like this in little rock pools. Yeah, I don't want to be reincarnated as a fish that eats bat droppings though. So avoid deep water culture or sterile systems unless thoroughly filtered to within an inch of its life. This is one for hybrid systems, cocoa and things like that. So, and passive systems. So that concludes today's episode on guano and its role in hydroponics, or its limited role in hydroponics. So whether you're an organic grower looking for a natural nutrient source or simply interested in organic alternative inputs, guano remains a powerful option. So keep it in mind. Obviously, chicken manure is the other excrement-based product, but I wouldn't use that in hydroponics. It's too much ammonia in there. It could potentially burn your crops. Chicken manure is famous for burning your crops and wouldn't provide much phosphorus or potassium as well. So for an all-rounded response, I'd definitely go for guano. It's not the cheapest product, can be very expensive, and that's what limits its use in horticulture. In only the top sort of garden centres would sell it. I've only ever seen it for sale in really top end sort of tropical nurseries in the UK. Your local garden centre, your local big box store, they're not going to touch it because it's going to be way too expensive, and they want the cheap and cheerful stuff that people understand, and no one's going to know what guano is in most garden centres. Whereas your grow shops, they will know what it is. Speak to your grow shop if you want to know what's the best option and what's the best company. As I said, I mentioned that one, Guano Kalong. They're based in Holland, and they're a reputable company that's been around for a long time. And I can say that I haven't got any skin in the game on that when it comes to guano. I don't sell guano. I don't, I sell alternatives to guano. So yeah, if you can trust me on that one. Okay, that's been Hydroponics Daily for today. Thank you very much for listening. Until tomorrow, I'll see you then. Goodbye.